Chicago, Illinois. A night in October. The city was swallowed by the bone-chilling cold, typical of the Great Lakes region, but inside, the Scarlet Spoon. It was a different world. This was a five-star restaurant where crystal chandeliers poured light over tables draped in pristine white linen, and the soft sound of a piano blended with the clink of glasses. Everything was wrapped in luxury and elegance, except the back of the house. 3. It was 11:45 p.m. Elara Reyes was on her final cleaning shift. She was nothing more than a shadow. After 12 straight hours on her feet, her body was wrecked, her uniform stained with faint smudges, stray strands of hair escaping her tight bun. The kitchen was hot, humid, and reeked of grease, a stark contrast to the vanilla and rose scents out front. For Elara, life in America was nothing but endless days of bowing and scrubbing until her back screamed. All she wanted was to get back to her tiny apartment in Little Manila. 3. Suddenly, a wave of cold, commanding air swept into the kitchen from the service corridor. Every small sound died instantly. Nico, the shadow Moretti, stepped through. 3. He was the embodiment of quiet danger. His charcoal Italian bespoke suit seemed to absorb the light, making him look taller and more imposing against the restaurant's backdrop. The tailor had skillfully hidden raw power beneath luxurious fabric. 2 massive bodyguards flanked him. Nico's smoke-gray eyes scanned the room, cold, indifferent. He was there to collect the Rossi family's monthly service tax, the blood-soaked protection money. For Nico, it was just another soulless transaction. 3. Elara stood by the industrial trash bin, mop in hand. The kitchen door was cracked open. She looked up at the exact moment Nico passed by. Everything seemed to slow. 3. It was not his harsh good looks that caught her. It was his eyes. Those eyes were bottomless, empty, almost otherworldly, yet sharp enough to cut straight through a person. In a fraction of a second, the gray gaze of the mafia enforcer locked onto the tired, yearning brown eyes of the cleaning girl. 3. No words. No gestures. Nico simply walked past. But that moment burned itself into Elara's mind. A primal fear surged through her, mixed with an inexplicable curiosity. She quickly dropped her gaze and kept scrubbing, pretending nothing had happened. 3. Nico stepped outside. The door closed behind him, carrying his cold authority with it. Yet, strangely, as he slid into the waiting luxury car, for the first time in years the mafia killer found himself remembering the face of a complete nobody. He had seen countless eyes, but the cleaning girls were not terrified. They were exhausted, yet unbreakable. 3. Chicago's night stayed freezing, but in Nico's mind a faint spark had flickered, enough to disturb the deadly stillness inside him. 3. 2 weeks passed since Nico Moretti visited the Scarlet Spoon, but for Elara, the image of the man in the black suit still haunted her. She kept working, trying to shake off the chill his gaze had left behind. 3. Then one Wednesday night, as Elara stepped out of the kitchen after her shift, she was surprised to see the usually nervous manager fidgeting anxiously by the bar. And then she saw him. Nico sat in his usual spot, the darkest corner of the mahogany bar. This time he was alone. No bodyguards. Just a glass of amber whiskey resting on cold stone. He was not there for business. He was there to sit. His presence created a low-pressure zone around the bar. Other patrons only whispered and kept their distance. 3. That night, the evening bartender had called in sick. The manager frantically dragged Elara from her regular cleaning duties to help wipe down and restock the bar. 3. Elara's heart pounded. She had to work right next to Nico. 3. She tried to move as fast as possible, avoiding his eyes, polishing the high-end wine glasses with a white cloth, the scent of liquor, sandalwood, and cigarette smoke drifting from Nico formed a masculine, menacing mix. 3. While reaching for a bottle on the lower shelf, exhaustion made her lose balance. The white cloth slipped from her hand and landed right beside Nico's polished leather shoe. 3. Elara. I immediately bent down, face burning with shame and fear, ready to apologize. But before her fingers touched the cloth, a large hand, long, strong fingers wearing a plain silver ring, picked it up. 3. Nico did not look at her. He studied the cloth, then slowly held it out. 3. Careful, he said, voice low and rough, carrying no threat at all. It was just a reminder, yet coming from a man who never reminded anyone of anything. 3. Elara carefully took the cloth back. This time she had to look up. She met those gray eyes again, but they were not icy like before. They were calm, almost searching. She saw the faint scar running from his temple to his cheekbone more clearly, a mark that told a violent story she did not dare ask about. 3. Thank you, sir, she whispered. 3. Nico gave the slightest nod, barely noticeable, and turned back to his whiskey as if nothing had happened. 3. But for Elara, it was the first time the most terrifying man in the restaurant had treated her like a human being instead of hired help. For the first time she saw the stark contrast between his icy exterior and the unexpected courtesy. 3. Nico stayed another 15 minutes. He finished his drink and left without another word. Elara wiped down the spot where he had sat. She could still feel the warmth of his body on the wood, and inside her, curiosity had officially defeated fear. She began wondering about the man behind the nickname, the Shadow. 3. After that first real encounter at the bar, Nico Moretti became a regular at the Scarlet Spoon. He did not come often enough to be obvious, but enough for Elara to notice his presence. He always sat alone, drank expensive whiskey, and never spoke to anyone else. Everyone knew who he was, and whenever he appeared the restaurant fell unnaturally quiet. 3. Elara always tried to work as far from him as possible, but sometimes their eyes met by accident. Nico never smiled, but he never looked annoyed or threatening either. He simply observed. 3. Until one torrential November night. 3. The restaurant closed late. Elara finished work, threw on her thin, old coat, and stepped into the empty parking lot. Street lights blurred in the rain, wind howling cold. 3. As she hurried toward the bus stop 2 blocks away, a sleek black sedan, spotless despite the storm, slowed and stopped beside her. Elara froze in terror. She recognized the car. The passenger window slid down, revealing Nico's face. 3. He said nothing, just looked at her through the curtain of rain. After a few tense seconds, he reached over and unlocked the passenger door with a quiet click. 3. Get in, he said. It was not a request or a question. It was an undeniable fact. 3. Elara stood still. Her heart raced, half terror, half pull. She knew who this man was, part of a world she only saw on the news, a world of violence and crime. Getting into that car meant stepping into the vortex. 3. I can take the bus. Sir, she stammered. 3. Nico did not push. He just held the open door, eyes steady. That silence carried more power than any threat. It challenged her. Would she rather stand freezing in the rain or accept this mysterious help? 3. Finally, exhaustion and cold won over fear, and something in his eyes did not feel malicious. It felt like deep loneliness. 3. Elara quickly climbed in and shut the door. She pressed herself against it, keeping maximum distance. 3. Little Manila. She whispered the name of her neighborhood. 3. Nico nodded slightly, started the engine, and the car glided smoothly over the wet streets of Chicago. 3. Neither spoke the entire ride. 3. The silence inside the luxury car was not oppressive. It was strangely comforting. Elara heard only the soft patter of rain and gentle jazz from the sound system. She stole glances at Nico. Streetlights slid across his hard, thoughtful features. His hands were steady on the wheel. Jacket off. White dress shirt, pristine. 3. He did not try to make conversation. He respected her boundaries. That commanding silence, combined with unexpected gentleness, eased her tension. She began to see that beneath the shadow was a man carrying an invisible burden. 2. When they reached the familiar, narrow alley of her building, Nico stopped. 3. Thank you, Elara said quickly, reaching for the door. 3. This Time, he spoke. You are welcome. Elara. He knew her name. 3. She froze in surprise. He had said her name, not girl or maid. A small warmth spread through her chest. She looked at Chaim one last time, then dashed through the rain into her building, leaving Nico alone in the dark, having just broken his first rule: never care about outsiders. 3. After that rainy car ride, the encounters between Nico and Elara took on new meaning. 3. Nico was no longer just a frightening regular. He still came to the Scarlet Spoon late at night, but instead of only sitting at the bar, he sometimes chose a hidden table where Elara cleaned after closing. Their first conversations were short and polite, but gradually they grew longer and deeper. 3. They created an unspoken rule. Nico never asked about Elara's painful past in the Philippines, and Elara never asked about his work. They kept a safe distance from their dangerous realities to build a small world of their own. 3. Elara talked about Manila, crowded streets, and her family's laughter. She spoke of her mother, who taught her to bake and to never lose hope. Her dream was not grand, just a little bakery on a quiet corner where people came not out of fear, but for sweetness. 3. Nico listened, something he had not done for anyone in years. His perpetually guarded face sometimes softened into something close to peace. 3 inches. Return. Nico did not talk about deals or hits. He only spoke of feeling trapped. 3. I grew up in this world, he said quietly one night, staring into his glass. Everything was decided for me. I did not choose this path. It chose me. When I try to leave, it just tightens its grip. 3. Elara saw the exhaustion and loneliness he could not hide. She realized that behind the expensive suits and the nickname The Shadow was a man utterly isolated, forced to live in darkness, with nowhere to let his guard down. She had seen his humanity. 3. Even darkness needs a small light to find its way, Elara answered softly after a long silence. 3. Her sincerity touched a soft spot Nico had buried long ago. For the first time, he felt truly seen, not as a weapon of violence, but as a man with desires and pain. When the restaurant closed, they often lingered a few extra minutes in the parking lot inside Nico's black sedan. Those were precious moments of absolute quiet, where they shared a connection words could not fully capture. 3. Their love grew quietly and defiantly, like a white flower pushing through Chicago's gray concrete. She was his small beacon of hope, his refuge from the world he was forced to inhabit. He was her protector, giving her safety, however contradictory, and attention she had never known. 3. They had crossed the line between a mafia enforcer and a cleaning girl, between wealth and poverty, between power and vulnerability. Their relationship was built on fragile but genuine trust, a profound empathy for two souls isolated in a vast world. 3. After weeks of sharing hidden stories and feelings, their relationship entered a new, more intimate phase. 3. One Saturday night, instead of driving Elara home to Little Manila and leaving, Nico asked. I am hungry. Want to cook something? It was a simple invitation with enormous meaning. The first time, he asked, to enter her small world. 3. Elara led him up to her cramped, rented apartment. Miles away from the mansions and fine dining, Nico knew. Her place was a single room with a tiny kitchen, lit by an old table lamp. The air smelled faintly of incense, old books, and a strange warmth. Everything was simple but spotless and carefully arranged, reflecting her owner's neatness and hope. 3. Nico stood in the middle of the room, his expensive suit taking up all the space. His eyes lingered on a family photo on the fridge and a meticulously marked recipe notebook. He saw simplicity, authenticity, and a beauty in life he had never dared dream of. 3. I am used to fancy meals, Nico said, with a self-mocking tone. 3. Elara laughed. A rare, relaxed sound. Then tonight you will experience the non-fancy life. Just my family's spaghetti with tomato sauce. In the kitchen, Elara moved with natural grace, a stark contrast to the stiff girl from the restaurant. Nico leaned against the wall, watching, a peace he had never found in multi-million-dollar deals or expensive liquor washed over him. 3. They ate together at the tiny table. For Nico, who was used to eating alone, even in crowds, it was the most real meal of his life. 3. After dinner, while Elara washed dishes, Nico stepped behind her. He placed a hand gently on her shoulder, light, but carrying the full weight of his world. 3. Thank you, he whispered, voice rough, for showing me a place without darkness. 3. Elara turned. She looked straight into his eyes. No fear, only love and understanding. Nico slowly brought his hand to her cheek, thumb brushing the faint scar there. The gesture was not possessive. It was protective and full of long, suppressed longing. He leaned down, and their lips met. 3. That kiss was not conquest. It was confirmation of a relationship that had transcended their social divide. It was both a promise and a prayer. 3 inches that moment. Elara felt the softness hidden beneath his steel shell and knew she was the only place he allowed himself to be truly human. Nico silently vowed Elara would be his peace, and he would protect that peace at any cost. 3 inches, that instant. Their love was sealed, sweet and dangerous. Right in the heart of cold Chicago, their secret relationship lasted a few more weeks. But in the underworld, nothing stays secret forever. The Rossi family was built on absolute vigilance, and the change in Nico, the shadow Moretti's behavior, could not be hidden. 3. Nico, famous for being a cold, efficient machine, had become distracted. He spent less time on plans and more time staring at his phone. 3. The meeting took place in the lavish north suburban mansion of boss Sal Rossi. The conference room, paneled in dark walnut, felt oppressive. 3. Sal Rossi, an older man with hawk-sharp eyes, leaned on the table and stared straight at Nico. 3. Sit down, Nico, Sal ordered, voice low and commanding. I hear you have got a new friend, a cleaning girl from the Scarlet Spoon. 3. Nico stayed perfectly calm, but inside he tensed. He knew he could not lie to Sal. 3. Personal matter, Nico replied evenly. 3. Sal gave a humorless smirk. There is no such thing as personal when you belong to the Rossi family. Nico, you are my sharpest weapon. Weapons do not get weaknesses. 3. Sal stood and slowly circled the table. Listen carefully. That cleaning girl, Elara, she is a security risk. She knows nothing about our world. She is light, and you are the shadow. Darkness cannot have light. It exposes all the filth. Worse, that light will draw our enemies straight to it. Sal stopped behind Nico and placed a hand on his shoulder. eyes meeting Nico's in the mirror across the room. End it, Nico. Now. Or I will remove the problem myself. 3 Saul's warning was not ordinary. It was a death sentence for Elara if Nico disobeyed. 3. Nico left the mansion in cold fury. He knew Sal was right about one thing. This love was a ticking bomb. But instead of fear, his determination to protect Elara only grew stronger. 3. He began total concealment. He cut contact with Elara for days, claiming urgent out-of-town business. The goal was to cool things down, make Sal think he had obeyed. At the same time, he started securing secret safe houses, preparing for the worst. Every passing second made Nico realize he could not go back. Between the Rossi family and Elara, he could only choose one, and his choice, however deadly, was clear. 3. Despite Nico's efforts to keep distance and stay discreet under Sal Ross's orders, the underworld never misses the smallest clue. The rival Falcons gang had noticed the change in Nico. They knew exactly how to strike at the Shadow's weakness. 3. That night, Elara finished late at the Scarlet Spoon. She was worried. Nico had not contacted her in days. As she stepped out the back door into the dark, deserted alley, she felt watched. 3. She hurried toward the bus stop. Suddenly, a black SUV with no plates roared from the corner. The vehicle screeched to the curb. Elara stumbled back in terror. She saw 2 figures inside. 3. Then bang. 3. A gunshot cracked the night. Not at her, but into the air above her head. The deafening sound nearly dropped her to her knees. Then a man leaned out the window and tossed a single perfect red rose onto the wet pavement. The same roses used at the restaurant. 3. The SUV vanished, leaving Elara shaking and paralyzed with fear on the sidewalk. The message was clear. They knew who she was, and they knew she was Nico's weakness. 3. Following survival instinct, Elara did not call the police. She called the only person she trusted, Nico. The phone barely rang once before he picked up. Voice like ice. Are you okay? 3. She could only sob. They shot. They know who I am. Nico. They left a rose. 3. Instantly, Nico's usual coldness vanished, replaced by explosive rage and primal protectiveness. He did not ask for details. He knew who and why. 3. Listen to me. Do not move. I am coming. Do not talk to anyone, he ordered, voice dropping into pure danger. 3. He arrived in under 10 minutes, tires screeching into a no-parking zone. He ran to her, face dark with fury, and pulled her into his arms, feeling her uncontrollable trembling. 3. Without wasting a second, Nico put Elara in his car. He did not drive to her apartment. He floored it out of the city. 3. Where are we going? Elara asked, trying to stay calm. 3. Somewhere you will be safe, Nico answered, eyes glued to the rearview mirror. He had a safe house ready in New Jersey, hundreds of miles away. You have to stay there. 3. They drove through the night. The house was small and hidden deep in sparse woods. 3. Once inside, Nico turned to her, his eyes no longer those of a lover, but of a soldier defending his last fortress. 3. Listen to me, Elara, he said heavily. You stay here. No going outside. No phone. No contact with anyone. I will handle this. I will come back. 3. Elara looked into his eyes and saw the promise and desperation. She nodded. She knew that to protect her, Nico was about to dive back into a world of darkness and violence. And this time, he would not just be collecting protection money. He would become the hunter. 3. After delivering Elara to the New Jersey safe house, Nico returned to Chicago. Her absence did not bring safety. It only fueled his rage and pressure. He operated more ruthlessly and efficiently than ever, hunting those who had dared touch her. 3. He did not sleep. He only stared at maps of Chicago, searching for a way out. He realized protecting Elara was no longer about keeping her hidden. It had become all-out war against both the world he once served and the one he once opposed. Nico understood that as long as he remained the shadow, Elara would always be a target. He was trapped. 3. Meanwhile, in the safe house, Elara lived in total isolation. She had food and supplies, but no peace. She obsessively watched local news, praying Nico's name would not appear. She had time to think about the nature of their relationship. She loved Nico, but she could not live, fearing every phone call might bring news of his death. 3. Finally, Elara could not take the uncertainty anymore. She used the single burner phone Nico had left for incoming calls only and dialed Chaim. 3. Nico answered instantly. Voice exhausted but alert. Are you hurt? What is wrong? Elara forced strength into her voice despite trembling. 3. I am okay. But you are not. Nico, she said firmly. I have seen your world. I know what you do, and I know what you are doing now. I know this will never end unless you end it yourself. 3. Nico went silent, listening. He felt an unexpected understanding from her. 3. Elara continued, her words cold but necessary cuts. Nico, I cannot live knowing you die a little every day. I do not need your money. I do not need power. I just need you. You cannot be the shadow and my partner at the same time. Those two things cannot coexist. 3. She took a deep breath and delivered the final challenge. If you really love me, Nico, choose a life where we can walk in sunlight without fear of bullets. You have to leave them. If you can, not, I will have to walk my own path. I will not let you die for me. 3. Elara's words struck Nico's heart like lightning. She had voiced his greatest fear and greatest desire. She was not asking for sacrifice. She was asking him to live. 3. Nico leaned against the cold wall of his Chicago safe apartment. He felt suddenly freed from a curse. 3. I understand, he said. Only 2 words. I will do it. I choose you. But leaving is not easy. I need team to cut ties without getting killed. He knew there was only one way to leave and still protect Elara from Rossi revenge. He had to make a final deal. A last sacrifice. To buy his freedom and her safety. 3. After the call, Nico did not hesitate. He arranged a private meeting with Sal Rossi, not to ask permission, but to negotiate release. 3. The meeting took place in an old warehouse where the family held secret talks. Just Nico, Sal, and 2 of Sal's most trusted bodyguards. The air was icy and smelled of rust. 3. Nico got straight to the point. I want out. For good. 3. Sal laughed scornfully, the sound echoing in the empty space. Out. This is not a job you quit. Nico, there is only one way out of the Rossi family. No, Nico replied, eyes like steel. There is a second way. I will deliver you a massive score. One deal that shifts the entire East Coast power balance in your favor. In exchange, you declare me dead and never touch Elara Reyes. Ever. 3. Sal stared, weighing Nico's seriousness. He knew Nico was a tactical genius, capable of impossible jobs. 3. The big New York diamond and hot weapons deal. Right. Sal narrowed his eyes. If you fail, you die. If you succeed, you still die. Our way. And if you ever betray us later, the cleaning girl pays. 3. Nico nodded. I accept. This is the last team I work for you. 3. The job went down 3 days later in an abandoned Brooklyn industrial zone. It was a complex exchange involving the Russian mob and arms smugglers. despite Sal's close oversight. Nico performed with his usual brilliance. 3. But everything went wrong. Undercover police raided mid-deal, turning the site into a chaotic firefight. Nico realized he had been set up. Sal never intended to let him live. He just wanted Nico's final haul. 3. Amid the bullets, Nico still completed the objective, securing the massive payoff for the Rossi family. But he took heavy hits, shoulder and ribs. In the chaos, Nico seized his last chance. He faked a fatal wound, used smoke and confusion to vanish, leaving all ID behind. As dawn broke over the Brooklyn Bridge, bleeding and in agony, Nico knew he had finally severed his past. The shadow was dead. 3. He had one last mission: get to New Jersey, find Elara, and start a new life under a new name. Despite the pain, for the first time he felt free and hopeful. 3. Many months passed since that horrific night in Brooklyn. Nico, now Marco Silvani, had fully recovered. He and Elara had escaped to San Diego, California, far from Chicago's cold and darkness. 3. San Diego was another universe: bright sunshine, clean salt air from the Pacific, a slow, peaceful rhythm. 3. They started over from zero, but with freedom and love. Nico, once orchestrating million-dollar deals, now worked as a mechanic in a small harbor garage. The manual labor was hard and greasy, but it was honest and brought Chaim peace. No more bespoke suits, just old t-shirts and jeans. 3. Elara finally made her dream real. With their tiny savings and Nico's help, she opened a little beachside bakery called The Shadow's Sweetheart. It quickly became famous for Filipino-American sweets. The smell of freshly roasted coffee and warm bread filled the street. 3. One Friday afternoon, golden sunlight bathed the street. Elara was wiping the counter, hair neatly braided, face glowing, no longer the exhausted cleaning girl. 3. The bell above the door jingled. Nico walked in. He was no longer the shadow, hair shorter and tidy, the faint scar fully healed, just a memory. He was Marco, an ordinary man, living an ordinary life. 3. He smiled. A real, relaxed smile Elara had never seen in Chicago. 3. Hi, Elara said, eyes shining with happiness. 3. Can I get a black coffee and one cleaning girl to go? Nico teased, leaning on the counter. 3. Elara ran around the counter and threw her arms around him. She felt his warmth, not the warmth of power, but of safety and love. 3. You okay? She asked, always worried about the nightmares that sometimes still came. 3. I am good. We are safe, Nico answered, kissing her forehead. The Rossi family believes Nico Moretti died in New York. We are off the radar. 3. They had chosen love over power, peace over luxury. Their life still bore scars, but it was built on absolute trust and sacrifice. Under California's golden sun, they had found peace and a new beginning, proof that even a mafia killer can escape the darkness if he has a light to follow. 3. The years that followed passed gently, like soft jazz drifting from the bakery every morning. 3. The Shadow's Sweetheart grew busier every year. Elara did not just sell pastries. She sold a story. Golden ensaimada, glistening with butter, fragrant bibinka, rich with coconut, and a new creation called Marco's Shadow, a deep, dark brownie, topped with smooth vanilla cream and a sprinkle of sea salt that sparkled like stars in a black sky. Customers said tasting it was like experiencing a love story both dangerous and sweet. 3. Nico, no longer greasy from the garage, had opened his own vintage motorcycle shop next door. Old Harleys and century-old Indians came back to life under hands that once held guns, but now only held wrenches. His customers were young speed junkies and old riders. No one knew the quiet mechanic with the faint scar had once been the infamous, the Shadow. 3. They had 2 children together. 3. The older was Sophia. Now 4. With curly hair and her father's startling gray eyes. She loved sitting on the bakery counter, hands covered in flour, shouting, "Papa, I want the black one you like." The younger was Matteo, 18 months old, chubby and always grinning, babbling "ma" and "pa" all day. 3. Every evening after closing, the family of 4 walked along Torrey Pines Beach. Nico carried Matteo on his shoulders. Sophia ran ahead collecting shells. Elara held his hand tight. The ocean breeze lifted her hair. And every teeny Nico stopped, bent down, and kissed his wife's forehead, just like that first night in Chicago. 3. Do you ever regret it? He asked once. Both of them sitting on the sand, watching a fiery sunset. 3. Elara shook her head and smiled. 3. My only regret is that we did not meet a little sooner, so you would not have had to carry all that darkness alone. 3. Nico was quiet for a long time, then pulled her close. 3. I do not have darkness anymore, he whispered. Only your light. Sophias, Mateos, and all our tomorrows. 3. Some nights, the old nightmares still woke him. Gunshots, blood, Sal Rossi's face. But every time, Elara simply wrapped her arms around him, placed her small hand on his chest, and everything calmed again. 3. One late autumn afternoon in 2031, Sophia 7 and Matteo 5. The bakery was packed. A tall man in a long black coat and fedora stood quietly across the street, watching through the window for a long time. Elara laughed with customers. Matteo on her hip. Nico worked on an old bike next door. 3. The man stood there a long while. Then he gave a small nod, as if satisfied, turned, and melted into the crowd. 3. No one noticed it, was Luca Rossi, Sal's youngest son, now head of the family. No one knew that years earlier Luca had quietly erased Elara and the dead Nico Moretti from every blacklist. Repaying one last debt, the Rossi family owed the man who had once been their father's right hand. 3. Only the ocean breeze knew that story. 3. And the ocean breeze never tells. 3. Under San Diego's golden sun. The little family kept living, kept loving, kept baking and fixing bikes. They were not rich or powerful anymore, but they had each other. 3. And for Nico, Marco, or whatever name he once carried, that was everything he had ever dreamed of on the coldest nights in Chicago.